Are you ready? Good to go? All right. I call this February 6th Planning Commission meeting to order. Welcome to the meeting. We have a nice crowd tonight on a not very cold night, but we always appreciate when you come up to give us your comments. I want to first welcome Chris Godfrey, our alternate tonight, to the Planning Commission. We have the minutes for the January 8th Planning Commission meeting. What is the desire of the board?
Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes, the updated minutes that were sent.
Second.
Motion has been made and properly seconded. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries. Ellie, can you read the public hearing procedure, please?
An individual requesting to be heard on a matter related to the purpose of this hearing must be recognized by the chair before addressing the commission. Upon rising to speak, the speaker must identify himself or herself and furnish a home or business address before proceeding with any comments or remarks. The commission will allow the proponents a total of 10 minutes to speak in support of an application. Opponents will also be allowed 10 minutes to speak in opposition. Comments are first accepted from the applicant, followed by persons speaking in favor, then from those in opposition. Upon conclusion of any opposing comments or presentations, the chair will allow the applicant to offer rebuttal if any time is remaining in the allotted 10 minutes. And the chair always has discretion to give additional time. Thank you.
Thank you. Ellie. Out of the 5 items we had on the agenda, 1 has been withdrawn and 3 have been deferred. So we're going to hear 2 of them, starting with MP-26-01/CU-26-01 Spirit of God Church, Windward Master Plan, Part 16, and Michael Woodman will be presenting. Michael?
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. The first item before you this evening is a request for master plan amendment and conditional use to operate a church in an existing 18,207 square foot office industrial building. A master plan amendment is requested to the Windward Master Plan Pod 16 to add church synagogue as a conditional use, and a conditional use is requested to allow Spirit of God to operate a church on the subject property. And I have the location map on the overhead. This property is located at 145 Noble Court. This property is 1.62 acres. It's zoned CUP, Community Unit Plan. And there's a 2-story building that was developed on the property in 2000. And it was developed as office industrial space. The comprehensive land use plan designation of the property is corporate office. Show you an aerial and a street view. So this is Noble Court coming off of Alderman. The property is here at the end cul-de-sac on Noble Court. This is a view of the building from the cul-de-sac. This is a view of the side of the building, the main entrance on the west side of the building. This is on the south end of the building. And this is also on the south end of the building. The east side of the building, there's an existing loading dock. And then this is leaving the site heading towards the cul-de-sac at Noble Court. As I mentioned, this is part of the Windward Master Plan. That master plan was approved in 1980 with a substantial update in 1993. Windward is a 3,000 plus acre planned community. Pod 16 within the Windward Master Plan is 19 acres, and it has a land use designation of business center, which allows office, research and development, and light industrial uses. We've had several master plan amendments in the Windward Master Plan over the years, and there are notably 2 master plan amendments that were approved on pods 56 and 66, and those were for same use for a church. Those were approved one was approved in 2006 and one was approved in 2007. As it relates to the applicant's request, Spirit of God Church is a non-denominational Christian church with a congregation of approximately 200 members. According to the applicant, about 60% attend services virtually. The church is currently holding worship services at the DoubleTree Hotel in Roswell. The applicant's intent at this location is to occupy approximately 2,000 square feet of the 18,000 square foot business, and then they would lease the remaining 16,000 square feet to an office industrial user. Applicant proposes an assembly area with a maximum seating capacity of 128 seats. And the church would operate on Sundays from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. with one worship service at 10 a.m. Church hours on the weekdays would be 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., so they would have some professional office space in the building as well for the church. And the church staff would be approximately 5 to 10 employees. The applicant states that their intent with the property improvements would be to complete interior renovations to the building for the worship center and fellowship hall, restripe the parking lot, and upgrades to the landscaping. The city's Unified Development Code requires one parking space for each 2 seats in a church, in the assembly area of a church. So for a 128-seat church, 64 parking spaces would be required, and that is the number of parking spaces that are developed on the property. There are 64 parking spaces. In considering the applicant's request, we looked at the review criteria for a master plan amendment and conditional use. We believe the proposal would be suitable as it relates to the use and development of adjacent and nearby properties, which are developed with office and industrial uses. The church's peak trip generation on Sundays would be when surrounding businesses are not in operation. And the use is supported by sufficient on-site parking. As I noted previously, church synagogue has been added to the master plan, Windward Master Plan in pods 56 and 66. Those pods also have the same land use designation of business center. The applicant provided a citizen participation report indicating that they received no comments. However, we did receive some comments, and we have 2 handouts related to this case that we handed out to each of the commissioners. We did late this afternoon, just before 5 o'clock, we received this letter from Janet Bozeman representing the Windward Business Center Association. They are asking you to defer the item this evening to give nearby property owners additional time to better understand the applicant's request. They've indicated in this letter that maybe some of the property owners received late notice or did not get notice of this request, so that's the reason for their deferral. And then at tonight's meeting, I received this letter, which I also handed out to you. This is from Underwood Scoggins, and this is representing an adjacent property. I forgot the name. Sierra Cedar is the name of the business. I believe they have frontage on Alderman Drive. They're just to the west of this location, and they are objecting to the applicant's request. I just received this letter and passed it out to you. I've not had a chance to review the contents of the letter. And then the community zoning information meeting was held on January 14th, and there were no public comments at that meeting. With that, the staff is recommending to Planning Commission to approve the applicant's request subject to 8 conditions, and I'll go through those conditions. 1, church synagogue shall be added as a conditional use in pod 16 of the Windward Master Plan. 2, church synagogue shall be an approved use at 145 Noble Court with a maximum seating capacity of no more than 128 seats in the worship center. 3, conditional use approval of a church synagogue shall be limited to Spirit of God Church. No additional church synagogue use or subleasing for a church synagogue shall be permitted within the approved space. Up to 16,000 square feet of the building may be leased to a professional office or industrial user. Condition 4, church synagogue shall be limited to worship services, professional offices, and other church group meetings outside of Sunday services. Condition 5 are the hours of operation. Condition 6, property owners shall replace missing landscaping such as trees and parking lot tree islands if there are no utility conflicts as approved by staff. Condition 7, church applicant shall hire an off-duty officer to control traffic if required by the city due to traffic impacts during services. In Condition 8, there shall be no outside speakers or broadcasts, including music which is audible from outside the building or off the property. And that concludes the presentation. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you, Michael. Couple of things. The letter that you put, actually two of them, you received them today?
Yes. So this one was just handed to me during about maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes before the meeting started. And then the letter from Windward Business Center Association was received just before 5 o'clock this evening.
Okay. Would you explain to the audience and the board the procedure for notification, the required notification for people within 500 feet?
Sure. So there's a variety of notification with a public hearing request. Of course, we post the property with signage. The applicant sends out public notification letters to all properties within 500 feet of the property. In this case, this is the subject property in the middle here, and this represents the 500-foot buffer map around. So any properties within this circle would have been part of our notification, and this is the notification list that we use. So the applicant uses this list as well as the city. Applicant sends out a notification notifying of the CZIM meeting as well as the Planning Commission and City Council meetings. And then the city sends out a public notification letters to those properties notifying of the Planning Commission and City Council meetings. Typically, we send those letters out about 2 weeks in advance of the designated meeting. So 2 weeks, the applicant's letter would go out 2 weeks prior to CZIM or approximately. And then the city's letter would typically go out about 2 weeks before the Planning Commission meeting.
Okay, and we'll ask the applicant when they send the letter out, because one of the request to defer is based on the fact that not properly notified last few days. It says the last few days or weeks, so that's not clear. And the letter from Underwood and Scoggins that you got today mentions about conflict with the Declaration of Covenants, but you did say you have not reviewed this yet?
I have not had a chance to review this letter. I did speak to the attorney that presented the letter to me, and she was able to give me some brief feedback on what was contained in the letter, which she referenced the deed restriction on uses, which we were not aware of. We do not enforce private deed restrictions.
Yeah, speaking for the board, when we get documents on the floor, it's hard to review them. And that's for even future opponents or proponents. We need time to review these documents, but we are going to hear the applicants, we're going to hear the audience, and I hope those who wrote the letters are here, and then the board will make a decision. All right. Any questions for Michael? Or any further questions?
I have one. Michael, I heard you mention that we do not enforce CC&Rs for associations. Is there, to your knowledge, no stipulation in zoning rules that say we need to in any way acknowledge or assure ourselves that CC&Rs have been adequately met before we can make a decision on a zoning application?
I don't know all the specifics, but I can just tell you that it's not something that we don't enforce HOA covenants, we don't enforce restrictions or deed restrictions. Many times we're not aware that they're even there in the first place.
So generally speaking, we're talking about two separate tracks.
Yeah.
There's the zoning requirements, there's CCNRs, it's two separate application processes, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Hearing none, we're going to ask the applicant to come forward and make a presentation. Is the applicant here? Please come forward.
Good evening. Thank you all for hearing us. We're just,
Can you
we've
state
been
your
in.
name, please?
Oh, I'm sorry,
Name and
Randall
address.
Knighton, for Spirit of God Christian Church, pastor of Spirit of God Christian Church. Again, it's just a conditional use permit for an area that we believed and is working with staff is afforded in that area. I do find it interesting that these letters are coming in at the 9th hour of non-notification, but you have to be notified to send that in. So they were notified in some capacity, but that's aside. Nevertheless, we've been in Alpharetta for 21, matter of fact, be this Sunday, it'll be 22 years. We've been in Alpharetta. Just want to have a worship service there, continue to keep the business that's there or some of the businesses that are there and maintain. I think the only thing I talked to Michael about might have been the stipulations on the weekend times to adjust those to maybe 7 a.m. versus 9 a.m. Outside of that, we've been a good neighbor. We've been a good citizens in Alpharetta for going on 22 years, or almost 22 years. I don't understand why it would be an issue with us having worship service during a time or having a church in that location during a time when most businesses are not even open.
How old is the church?
21
years?
21 years. We started in Northwestern Middle School.
And where have you been meeting before now?
We were meeting at the Alpharetta Business Center, which no longer exists. Then we were meeting at where we were meeting on Hembry Road, and I can't think of the name of the school that's there now. It's a light blue building. I can't remember the name of the school that's there now. We were meeting there, and then prior to COVID, we ended up, because our lease was up there and the school wanted the building that we were using that was on that property. So we went to the DoubleTree Hotel, and of course COVID hit, and we went primarily to virtual services. And so kind of now, that's kind of what we do. We do 2 services in DoubleTree, and the rest are virtual per Sunday. But again, if we were to have our own building, and again, we own property at 1200 Upper Hembry Road, and that we're putting up for sale now to basically purchase an existing building. This one came available. First thing I did was reached out to staff to see if a church could even be there. And they told me that, other churches, I guess, had pursued it, maybe not this far. And so we're not concerned about traffic. We're not concerned about any of those things. We understand the way the city of Alpharetta operates because we've been here for 21 plus years. And we've been good citizens for 21 plus years. So.
And how long do you intend to lease this property?
No, we plan to our plan is to purchase it, not lease it.
Oh, this property is to
Yes.
purchase it. Okay, I understand now. And with respect to parking, I assume that you expect
Yeah.
and pray that the church will grow.
Yes.
What do you do in that case?
In that case, we will have multiple services. That's one of the reasons why I want to push it to 7 a.m. A church can still have same Sunday services, have one at 8, one at 10, and one at 12. You can have Saturday evening services and still accommodate that in the event that we are unable to secure an area that is close by for additional parking. If we don't, that's our plan. So I've had some off-the-record comments, which I really don't want to put on the record about that, but in the event that we were allowed to, we might have a parking solution for growth. But that's a conversation that we can't have until we have the building, if that makes sense.
Understood. Any other questions for the applicant?
You said you were going to buy the building, the entire building?
Yes, that's our plan, yes.
Okay.
Pastor, churches very often will have special occasions, holidays, weddings, funerals, special events. With a congregation of 200, would you anticipate, besides the growth concern, occasions on which you would need to park 200 plus people at any one time?
Well, we wouldn't have event where we wouldn't have the proper parking. We wouldn't host that event. We would have to have that event elsewhere.
Okay, so if a member of your congregation were to want to have a wedding, it would need to be somewhere else.
If the number that they're going to invite would violate the parking agreement that we have with the city of Alpharetta, absolutely. We've done that before, where someone dies and you have a funeral, but you understand it's going to be a lot of people at this funeral. We just can't have it at this location. We need to have it at another location because we're not going to violate what we've agreed to with the city of Alpharetta in order to accommodate someone, but we'll do that up front. And so that wouldn't be an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Do you meet on Wednesday night?
Actually, we normally have Bible study on Thursday night.
Okay.
That's a long story from 21 years ago, but nevertheless, yes, we do have a midweek Bible study, but primarily, to be honest with you, that's on Zoom because it's so much more convenient for our members and membership, especially our older members. And while we might have that in that building, it would be very minimal people that would actually show up in person because they've gotten so accustomed now to Zoom. There might be a praise team rehearsal, but again, you're talking 10 people. So.
All right. Any other questions?
I do. A couple. Hello.
Hey.
Couple things are, I think right now you're doing, having services first and second Sundays of the month. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I think I read somewhere that 60% of your members are virtual, right?
Mhm.
So a lot of people that are attending your church watch it virtually.
Right.
And I'm assuming you're expecting that to grow because COVID kind of changed a lot of church attendance.
Yes.
So you're thinking that the growth is going to be more in online versus
Well, yes. I think even if there's growth in person, then I think that growth will have doubled online because you're going to get now, the reality of church is you get more people online across the world than you will get in person at a location. In the event that we grow beyond what our seating capacity is under these conditions, we'll very simply go to 2 services and we'll go to 3 services, or we'll make ourselves more available. That's not a problem. And then, of course, we're going to live stream the service that we're having. So a lot of people, take, for instance, these last 2 Sundays, we obviously did not have worship because of winter weather, but we had worship online. So a lot of times then you get summer, you get traveling. One of the things that I've learned, and I just mean this as honestly as I can, when you're pastoring in Alpharetta, it's just different because people go on vacations and they go for a while. So it's not the same, just a small corner country church where everybody just lives around and everybody comes every Sunday. That's just not what we see.
So also, when I drove the property, there was a lot of like tractor trailers and stuff parked in the back. Do you know anything about that? And is the owner of that building going to clear all that out for you?
In the event that we purchased it, yes, it's going to be, and here's the reason why, is because our parking is so limited. The one thing we cannot afford is to have parking spaces taken up. That's the one thing we cannot afford to have. So that would, once we become owners, then that's going to, that has to change.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much. I have a question about being a landlord. This would be your first time of potentially being a landlord, as my understanding. If you're buying the building, and then
Right.
and some of the notes we were read, there's a significant portion of the square footage that you look to release.
Right.
So, are you prepared to financially take that on and be a landlord and kind of maintain property?
Yes, we have obviously, one of the other beauties of having membership in Alpharetta is we have people within our congregation who handle those kind of things and will certainly be willing to assist us in handling that and making sure that we adhere to everything that is set before us.
Certainly.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
So the 8 conditions that Michael reviewed in regards to the staff conditions, do I understand that you are in support of those 8 conditions?
Yes, we are. And the only one that I asked and I mentioned to Michael was about the time the start times of 9 a.m. I just wanted to push that to maybe 7 a.m.
For the Sunday worship?
for Sunday worship or even Saturday mornings, because sometimes, our men's ministry will have a prayer breakfast or something like that. And, we'd have to get in a little earlier to kind of set things up. And in the future, if we have to go to early service, if we're going to start a service at 8, we'd like to be able to have access at, I wouldn't want there to be an issue with us being there at 7 o'clock getting prepared.
So the way that the condition currently reads is Sunday worship services shall be limited to 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., and weekday hours shall be limited to 9 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Correct.
So you want the opportunity to start at 7 for both weekday and Sunday worship? Or
Yes,
just-
if possible. If it's going to be a problem, then not. But the reason why is for those reasons I stated.
Okay, I just wanted to understand a little
Okay,
bit better.
yes.
Thank you.
And to clarify further, I believe he wants Saturday. I don't.
Yeah, not weekday, Saturday. I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Godfrey.
Yeah, so we don't have Saturday at all currently.
Yeah, well, yeah, I would want the Saturday.
Okay.
More so than the week, not Monday through Friday,
So
but Saturday and
currently,
Sunday primarily.
Sunday with hours listed and weekdays with hours listed. I believe he wants to add Saturday. And would that be the same hours as Sunday? 7
Yes.
a.m. to 3 p.m.?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Anyone else with a question? Please.
Just a quick question, and it's more about the expansion that, in your application that you had mentioned, in a few years, you'd look to expand into the warehouse and create a new worship service. My assumption would be that you're going to be adding more seats, more people, and then we're back to the parking issue again. That if we go over 128 seats, it would not comply with the parking regulations.
Well,
But I just want to make sure that I understand, or I just want to say it out loud, that in your application, you're talking about growing in person past the seating capacity that you have now in a few years. Is that correct?
that is what we hope. That's not guaranteed. In the event that we did, then obviously we would adhere to all parking seating ratios, and then we would look at other dynamics to make sure we stayed within those.
Okay, thank you.
One additional question. You heard mention, even though this is a separate process from what we're engaged in right now, which is the rezoning itself, that the Windward Business Association has covenants that would require that you apply for and get approval within their rules. Is that something that you're aware of and are prepared to take on?
We are aware of it. We are prepared to take on. We just want to be treated fairly.
Understood. Thank you.
That's it.
All right, if there are no further questions, I'll open the meeting for public comments. You can take a seat. I'll give you some time for rebuttal after the public comments. Anyone would like to speak in favor, please come forward. Or do you have people signed up?
I don't have anyone in favor. I have 2 in opposition.
Okay, do we have anyone in favor? Seeing none, we can call those who are in opposition.
I have Jessica Cantrell.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jessica Cantrell. I'm an attorney with Underwood Scoggins. I am representing an interested party, the business of Sierra Cedar and Alderman Drive Holdings. First, I would like to apologize for the late entry of the letter. That was something that I worked on this afternoon, and I brought it here to submit to you, so I apologize for that. Second, as for the comments on the notices being sent out, a lot of these businesses that are in the Windward Business Center are corporations and LLCs. They're not being received. That's just the nature of businesses and LLCs. You'll see a lot of them were from Delaware or being sent to Miami without, sending them to attention to a specific person. They're just going to sit there, especially with a meeting being scheduled within a couple weeks. It's just not plausible. Otherwise, somebody would have attended, I'm sure. Then to address some things that Mr. Knighton said, as far as fairness goes, there's no animosity for a church. However, this particular location is not suitable for a church. This is a office and industrial park. This is what it was meant to be. So in my letter, there are several concerns, a lot of parking concerns. There are 64 parking spaces for an 18,000 square foot building. This building, when it was built, the owner of it used 7,000 square feet for an office. The rest was used for warehouse storage and for light industrial repairs. It was never meant for a large amount of people to congregate. It never was. Then two other churches had approached the association about a church location being there, but parking was always the determining factor, and that's why they never decided to proceed. That and the Windward Business Center Association said that it is against their use restrictions, and they would never get board approval for it. They are meant to be a professional office space and to bring industry to Alpharetta. That and the security risks for businesses that operate after hours and on the weekends and having unknown people there. Some of the largest tech for research and development work there. And two of the largest breaches in U.S. history happened right there. So to have unknown people there, and I'm not saying anything about the congregation, but when you have late night hours, even as a former prosecutor, you are asking for loiterers to come. When you have businesses that are open after hours, you are asking for people to come and hang out and to be present when all the other businesses around are closed. And that is not something that this business center is set up for. They are a professional center, and that is how they were planned, that is how they were built, and that is how the businesses have invested into this particular center. And as far as the other amendments to the master plan in pods 55 and 56 with the First Baptist Church and
Chairman, this person has gone for 5 minutes. I'm just letting you know, so the next person.
Okay, thank you.
They are that was 19 and 20 years ago. And the First Baptist Church, as the crow flies, is over 3 miles away. The other location is across the highway and almost 0.9 miles away. It is not relevant to the internal Windward Business Center and shouldn't be considered for this application. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Second person.
Brian Fees, please.
Good evening.
Good
My
evening.
name is Brian Fees. I reside at 3695 Schooner Ridge in Alpharetta as well. It's part of the Windward Master Plan. I've lived here for 26 years. I also am 50% owner of the business at 1255 Alderman Drive. We have invested heavily in this location. We employ just under 500 people, and we have a business that's highly concentrated in data. And more specifically, we house information on, I'm not going to say in a public meeting, but let me just say millions of higher ed students and graduates in the United States. We work primarily with R1 universities. We work with healthcare agencies, and we work with state and local governments throughout the United States. We have invested in the Windward complex. We moved from 1720 Windward Concourse, which was just outside the complex, when there was a data breach and a mortgage processor in our building lost large amounts of data when the burglars came into the building and removed their servers. We moved into Windward. We put in heavy security. We were approached by each of the prior applicants or parties that were wanting to purchase this building as a church. We had discussions with them. We were favorably disposed to having a church. We thought it was a good thing for the community. We're not adverse to a church. But when we looked at the cyber issues and the restrictions we have, where those parties, those churches, were specifically wanting to lease our parking lot. We have more contiguous space with this property than any other owner. And each of those parties proposed to put a stair in from this property onto our property and enter into a long-term lease. But the issue was the adjacency was a problem from a cybersecurity risk perspective in having parties in our parking lot in hours outside our business. And so we're not alone in this concern. Equifax is nearby. Kimmons is right next to us, they're FDA. And directly across from this parcel is a defense contractor that specializes in night vision. And their parking lot is wide open. The applicant also, as they indicated, owns the property at 1200 Upper Hembry Road. And they've been before this body twice. Most recently in 2025, they submitted an application. They were approved for an application in 2020 for their building there. They started out at 20,000 square feet, roughly, and had, I believe, 150 parking spaces required, and an off-site parking agreement required by the city for that parcel. They came back in June of last year and applied to reduce that and cut their square footage to 14,000 square feet and to reduce their parking to, I believe, 112 parking spots. As someone has noted in this application, they're proposing that only 2,000 square feet of the building would be occupied as a parish hall, if you will. But it says in the application their intent is to occupy eventually the warehouse. The warehouse is just under 5,500 square feet. So it would alone have a parking requirement that would be more than double what's present on this parcel. And the parcel parking at 64 is stretched. If you've been to the property, much of that was intended for dock loading, trash container, and so forth. I spoke with the gentleman that owned and developed this property and who owns also the adjacent property. He was not able to be here tonight, but he sent a letter to me. And he said, I'm glad you're going in opposition. He still owns 2 acres remaining, which is the rest of the contiguous, the majority of the contiguous land border with this parcel. He is also opposed. Kimmons, who owns the balance of the frontage with this property, also, I spoke with the CEO who had not received notice 2 days ago, and he's opposed. So I think there's some serious concerns, and at a minimum, we would ask that this body would give us sufficient time to review, let other landowners who've invested heavily, millions of dollars. I think Equifax just announced another $25 million investment to understand what the ramifications are of having a church in our neighborhood on the interior of the parcel without adequate parking. there is no off-street parking allowed in the Alpharetta subdivision. And 64 parking spots, I have never gone to a funeral, and I've never attended church where somebody said, we're full. It's generally stand in the lobby, get a folding chair, which is audible or honorable. We want people to be able to worship. But I don't believe that a plan that doesn't address concurrency of use, concurrent use of the worship facility with the remaining 16,000 square foot of office is viable at 62 spots.
It's over 10 minutes now.
Okay.
I'll wrap up. I'm happy to answer any questions as a landowner, but I appreciate the opportunity to present. I also apologize for the lateness. We simply did not receive notice with sufficient time to respond, and so that's why we're asking for your time. Thank you.
We appreciate that, and thank you for your comments. Anyone else in opposition? Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment. I'll ask the applicant to come back if you'd like some time for rebuttal of what you heard.
A couple of things. Number one, if there were data breaches before we ever got to this property, I don't understand how that's an issue that shines a negative light on us. The data breaches happened whether we were there or not. That's one issue. The other issue is that some of these folks that are being quoted as having issue, there's someone who owns about 2 acres, I believe, that's adjacent to this property, who I had a conversation with, who was not opposed to it. But that's hearsay or whatever it may be. The concerns about what we did at another property or what we petitioned this or the city council for in the past was based upon the property where we were. And again, as I've stated, and I've been very consistent, predominantly we're online. Yes, on that particular case, when we first submitted it, where he's talking about a parking agreement and all that kind of stuff like that, outside of that, that was done prior to COVID. When we came back, we looked at some other things. And again, if we were going to be on our own property, then yes, that was one situation we looked at for that. But we're looking at where we are as a congregation now. Everybody, of course, wants to grow. But part of the issue is that we have solutions for that. And again, even the comment in regards to the notification piece, we followed what the city staff told us to follow. I don't understand how that's a negative on us, that we did everything that the city of Alpharetta asked us to do as far as notification. And then now it seems like we're the villain in that because they didn't receive the notification at the time that they wanted it. That's not a negative. That shouldn't be held against us, just like the data breaches shouldn't be held against us. To simply say, we're not saying that having a church creates a security issue when you're actually saying having unknown people come in creates a security issue, and that's fine. Let me also say this. My son-in-law is a field training officer for the City of Alpharetta Police Department. He actually is going to be a part of our security in this, as well as others in regards to that. Churches get robbed too, whether people realize this or not. People steal equipment out of churches all the time. So if they're concerned about security, we're just as concerned. It may not cost as much as their stuff, I get it. More importantly, above all else, all of that may be considered feelings or whatever. We went to the city of Alpharetta. We asked the question. We asked them, would they support that? City staff said they would support a church being in that location, and we have proceeded forward, and we have done everything that has been asked of us to do. The other items that have been listed as objections, that's fine, we respect that, but many of those items are issues that happened whether we were there or not, and they did happen, and we weren't there. I just feel like that's fake. And again, about being treated fairly, again, that's, nevertheless.
I have a question for you, and
yes, sir.
It's reasonable, everybody. I mean, we hear everybody, and if there was time allowed for you to talk to them, those who want to have a better consideration, understanding of the exposure or potential impact to their businesses, would you be open to that?
I absolutely would be open to it under the condition that they're going to be genuinely open to receiving us. Because what I've heard tonight is they just don't want us there, and that's fine. You can have that right. And you're talking about an entity that's going to be there a few hours a week primarily.
And the reason I ask this, it's not unreasonable for people to expect to have good relationships with their neighbors. And
Yes.
anytime you have, and I'm not suggesting that that's what we are going to do. I'm basically asking you a leading question, whether that would be beneficial for that attempt to be made to discuss this with them so they can be more comfortable and start off on the right foot.
Yes. Let me be on record. Absolutely.
Okay.
Like I've said, we've been a good neighbor in Alpharetta for 22, this Sunday will be 22 years. We've never had any issues or anything like that. I have no problem with that at all. Matter of fact, one of the commandments that I live by is to love thy neighbor as thyself. So I certainly will come and enter into any conversation, dialogue in regards to that. What I would just simply ask is, with the same genuineness that I would come to the table, that they would do the same.
I think they heard that. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant? Yes, please. Okay. All right. I'm going to turn this over to the board for discussion, and I will start by asking Michael a question. You can take a seat.
Thank you.
The board can ask you questions at any time during the discussions. Michael, will you come forward, please? When are notifications considered received? Is it when they are mailed, put in the mailbox? Because this is an issue of the requirements for notification. I know that, and you stated it before, and the applicant, the speakers mentioned the same thing. Businesses are headquartered in some other state, may take longer for them to receive theirs. If they are residential, they can get it, the day after. So how is that considered or accommodated?
Well, I mean, once we postmark the letter and the postmaster or whoever is picking it up, and it's left we're assumed that it's been sent out to the proper location at that time.
And I understand people could be out of town, they could be living somewhere else, so you
Sure.
can't accommodate everybody.
Sure. We can certainly take under consideration, especially when we get a request in a commercial area like this. I definitely have heard that before, that a lot of times these letters are mailed to like a corporate headquarters, and that may not get disseminated down to the local location of that business. So we can certainly look at our notification when we send that out, and maybe send that out a little bit sooner. But we did send out notification and followed our normal procedure in this case.
Okay, so the current procedures was followed to the letter, and we can't change that. That's for something for future consideration. That's all I had for you, unless a board member has a question for you.
I do. Michael, this case is probably a good example that we could look at because of the things that we have coming up with mixed-use developments going forward, where there's an HOA that's involved, some sort of an association that has CC&Rs that need to be observed that would impact the options to a potential property buyer that are outside the purview, at least as I understand it and we've discussed, outside the purview of zoning per se, but definitely do impact what options are available to a possible property buyer. So could it be possibly that when you have a situation of needing to notify people possibly affected by a zoning request, that you include an HOA if there is one involved? They might have a better chance of actually reaching the affected parties?
We do normally
Do you?
reach
Okay.
out to the HOA. We'll include them on the public notification. In this case, We should have sent an extra letter to the Windward Business Center Association. I honestly, it slipped my mind. It doesn't come up on the mailing list when you create the 500-foot map in that case, but I should have remembered to at least include them.
Oh, you had nothing else on your mind? So, okay, that would be then probably a good note to make, just going forward, again, because of all the mixed uses that we have. And just to confirm again, because I know we said this before, when there are matters having to do with zoning, then there's matters having to do with CCNR.
Yep.
And it would probably help us all to get a legal confirmation that this body does not consider whether it complies with the CCNRs as part of its criteria, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
One quick question. Were we aware that Sierra Cedars has talked to other churches in the past and have not been for this property being a church?
I was aware that there have been a couple different churches before this applicant that was looking at this property. In fact, we did have one application submitted to us. Both of those churches that I was speaking to had much larger congregations. They intended to utilize the entire building. They had looked at, there's an adjacent property that is undeveloped that used to be part of the subject property. And I know one of the churches discussed with that property owner potentially buying that parcel and developing a parking lot over there. They were unsuccessful in doing that. The other church applicant that I had been speaking to, I believe, did have a discussion with an adjacent property to the west, which most likely would be the Sierra Cedar property. And I think that property is pretty close in proximity, and I think they talked to them about maybe utilizing their parking on Sundays for overflow parking. Again, that applicant did have a much larger congregation, and so they needed the extra parking. This applicant meets his parking on site based on 128-seat capacity.
Okay.
But I wasn't aware that they were against the use. That was not communicated to me until tonight.
Thank you.
Are there any restrictions as to where a church can be located in Alpharetta?
Well, certainly. So with a church, in our zoning code, we allow, federal law dictates that we have to allow a church by right in at least one of our zoning districts, which we do in the light industrial zoning district. No conditional use required for that use in light industrial. And then we allow a church with approval of a conditional use in all other zoning districts. And this is just based on the RLUIPA federal law.
And that's my understanding, but I wanted the audience to hear that.
Hey, Mike, on the parking, it says UDC requires one parking space for each, 2 seats in the primary. That's 64 seats for the 128-seat church. The remaining portion, 16,000 and so forth. And then it says that's 40 spaces. And then at the end, it says the property is developed with 64 parking spaces, which is sufficient. Am I reading that wrong, where 64 and 40, isn't that 104, or am I not hearing that right?
You wouldn't add the two numbers together because when the church is going to have the highest demand on parking is going to be on Sundays, when the building, the 16,000 square foot of the building is not operating. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This is still with the board for discussion in our motion, and I just want to mention that you heard what the applicant said, you heard the speakers. You can either deliberate and make a decision to be forwarded to council and for council to make the final decision, or you can defer for whatever reason with a Sunday.
Well, go ahead, William, if you would like to. I would just maybe make a recommendation to possibly defer this so that the applicant and the parties can have a discussion and see if we can come with some kind of agreement. I do think that there are some things particularly for this particular area that maybe there is something to be concerned about, but I think that warrants a really good conversation between the two parties to see if there can be some kind of agreement. That would be my thoughts at the moment.
Commissioner Reynolds, I concur with that, and that is that there seems like there's a lot of moving parts, and I don't know what the exact validity of these letters are that were recently given to us, but there are some things that seem like they do need to be addressed, and if there is a recommendation for deferral, that may be best for both parties.
Yeah, I would like to add that, frankly, I don't think, I think the issue would be the same regardless of what tenant or what possible buyer would be interested in that particular property. It could be like a small distributorship with different parties coming and going at odd hours, which would introduce more unknown players. Just because it's a church, it could be the same as any other business. It could be in that building doing business with people that you don't have certified, registered, whatever, and know who they are. A data center obviously has some unique security requirements, totally understand that, and probably faces some challenges in hardening their sites and their security such that you can be more confident in your security. I'm not sure what you do under these circumstances about a building that is unoccupied, that someone could buy, and could have people that you don't know coming and going regardless of who they are. So that might be a discussion that is best had within your Windward Business Association, and you pursue this through the CC&Rs. So not only would I agree with deferring to allow the applicant to communicate and interact on concerns with just their application, but also to allow the related business owners to get with the the HOA and resolve from a CC&R perspective what your process really needs to be to provide you the comfort that you need for your businesses.
I think with the applicant telling us he is comfortable taking a little more time to meet and discuss this with the neighbors to make them comfortable, give me some comfort in that I would support a deferral for that very purpose. And I am supportive of this application as it stands now, all things considered. But I think for a decision of this magnitude, if there is any benefit, which I believe there is, with getting with the neighbors and getting to a much better comfortable level, would be prudent to do. I'm not by any means suggesting the board that you do that, but just being as transparent as I can be.
Well, with that, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion then to defer MP-26-01/CU-26-01 Spirit of God Church Windward Master Plan Pod 16.
When would you like to defer that to? You have to have a certain date.
Well, Michael, would you have a March 5th?
Second.
A motion has been made and properly seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries. It's going to be heard the next meeting, which is March 5th. You heard the matters, and you can work with staff, your neighbors. You know what to do, and come back on the 5th. The board will hear it again. Thank you very much. The second item on the agenda is MP-26-02 Lakeview Park, MP Trenton Homes, and Michael is presenting again.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. The next item before you is a request for master plan amendment. The request is to exchange 200,000 square feet of office for 25 for-sale single-family detached homes and 27 for-sale townhomes. This is on a 6.46 acre site in the 62 acre mixed-use development known as Lakeview Park. And that is also covered by a master plan. Master plan amendment is requested to allow the proposed change in development mix. And I have the location map on the overhead. This property is located at 0 Lakeview Parkway. It's the southeast corner of Lakeview Parkway and Lake Street. This is an aerial of the site. This is Colonial Pipeline here. The new apartment complex with ground floor retail restaurant is located here, and then you have some townhomes that have begun to be constructed across Lake Street from the subject site. As I mentioned, the mixed-use development is actually a total of just under 63 acres, which encompasses this entire property here and then to the south here below the lake. This is a view of the property from the roundabout looking over into the property. So you can see that it has been, it was cleared and graded with the installation of the infrastructure for this mixed-use development. Property is zoned MU, mixed use. As I mentioned, subject to the Lakeview Park master plan. It is also located in the North Point overlay. The comprehensive land use plan designation of the property is mixed use, which does support the proposed development mix. The Lakeview Park mixed use development is currently approved for just under little over 31,000 square feet of retail restaurant. Currently approved for 315 total residential units. That consists of 255 for rent units and 60 for sale townhomes. Of course, the applicant is asking to add 25 for sale detached homes as well as an additional 27 townhomes. The current density on the property is 5.04 dwelling units per acre. Density is spread over the full 62 plus acres of the site. With the applicant's proposal for 52 additional residential units, that would increase the density to 5.87 dwelling units per acre. In the MU zoning district, the cap at this location would be no more than 8 units per acre, so it is well below that. Currently, the property, the mixed-use development is approved for a little over 630,000 square feet of office. If the request was approved, that would be reduced by 200,000 square feet to just over 430,000 square feet of office. And then the master plan has a little over 32 acres of open space. With the development of the 6 acre site, there is an additional 1.3 acres of open space, so they would actually increase the open space, which they well exceed the minimum required by our code. And then within the MU zoning district, we also have minimum percentages of uses, so minimum 10% commercial, minimum 25% office, minimum 25% residential. So the applicant did provide a before and after, so the current condition. Currently, there's 48% office. With the applicant's request, that would reduce the office percentage to 40%, so it's still over the minimum 25%. And then residential is currently at 26%, and with the applicant's proposal, residential would increase to 32% of the mixed-use development. This is the applicant's site plan. Site plan depicts the 25 detached homes oriented to Lake Street, and then the townhomes are located central to the development, as well as 2 townhome buildings along, this is also considered Lake Street. So Lake Street winds all the way around this site. So there's 2 buildings of townhomes on this short section of Lake Street. The townhomes and homes are depicted to be 3 stories. They're approximately 22 foot wide, and they are have rear entry garages. The detached lots have minimum lot width of 32 feet and an average lot size of 31,000 square feet. Units, as you can see, units will have access from a series of alleys within the development. Those will be maintained by the HOA. There's a 35-foot setback along Lake Street and a 65-foot setback along Lakeview Parkway. And 5-foot sidewalks are depicted throughout the development. The UDC parking regulations in North Point Overlay require 105 parking spaces for this community. Each of the townhomes and homes will have 2 side-by-side parking spaces in a garage, as well as 2 spaces on a code-compliant driveway, for a total of 208 parking spaces. And there are additional 24 guest parking spaces throughout the development. So there's some on-street here, there's a grouping of guest spaces here, as well as here near their amenity space. What's not included in the staff report is there's a condition. When we get to the conditions, I'll point it out, but we do have a condition that requires that the streetscape be finished along Lake Street. So this portion of Lake Street, the on-street parking and sidewalk have not been installed yet. So that would be a continuation of the streetscape that has been done along this section, which does have on-street and sidewalks. So there will be additional parking nearby the site. As I mentioned, within this almost 6.5 acre property, the applicant is showing 1.3 acres of that to be amenity space for the future residents of this community. That exceeds the minimum 15% that's required in the North Point Overlay, which would be just under 1 acre. And the site plan is depicting a linear open space along Lakeview Parkway and Lake Street, as well as the central community area at the center of the development. As I mentioned, the property was previously cleared and graded, so there are not tree save opportunities except for the existing trees that are in the landscape strip along Lakeview Parkway. Those are being saved. They're not being touched, those trees. And then stormwater for this project is through a master stormwater system for the entire mixed-use development. And this is just a color site plan. The applicant did submit renderings and elevations of the townhomes and homes. Primarily exterior materials are brick and stone. There are some board and batten accents mixed in. All of the units have porches and or elevated decks or balconies. And then they also used dormers to break up the roof line. And I'll just quickly go through these. I don't want to take away from the applicant's presentation. These are just some street views of what you would see from Lake Street and Lakeview Parkway as well. This is from Lakeview Parkway looking down into the development with that central amenity area here. And these are the actual elevations that are renderings that are referenced in the condition related to architecture and materials by Caldwell Klein. This is a townhome building. These are the detached homes. And then you have side elevations as well. There are a few of the townhome buildings and homes that have a side elevation that face the street. So we always want to see what the side will look like. And you can see there's a lot of detailing on the side elevation here. With regard to traffic, the proposed residential development would generate approximately 35 a.m. peak hour trips and 41 p.m. peak hour trips. When you look at the 200,000 square foot office building that is approved for this site, the residential proposal would reduce total AM peak hour trips by 209 AM peak hour trips. And then in the PM, if you remove the office and build the residential development, that would reduce the PM peak hour trips by 188 PM peak hour trips. So the office would actually produce 244 AM peak hour trips and 229 PM peak hour trips. So the residential development would result in a lot fewer trips. So of course, looking at that review criteria for the master plan amendment, we believe the proposal is suitable given the use and development of adjacent properties are primarily developed as a mixed-use development. For sale residential use is already a permitted use in the master plan. And the proposed density is below the maximum density permitted in the MU zoning district, which is a maximum of 8 units per acre. And the proposed density is less than the density approved in the 2017 master plan amendment. The proposal, of course, would bring additional housing to the area, bringing people closer to goods and services and where they work, without having significant impacts on public facilities and services. So there's a lot of open space. There's the Alpha Loop that has been approved with this development. And I'll just go back to the original, the 2019 approved site plan. This is it. This is the subject property here. You see the office building with a parking deck here. This is Colonial Pipeline. The red line here represents the Alpha Loop within this development. There is a red line here that went through the Spine Street. That was at that Alpha Loop connection was actually moved in 2021 from within the development to along the George 400 buffer here. So that's the only thing that's changed on the site plan, is this portion of the Alpha Loop is actually moved into the George 400 buffer. But this portion of the Alpha Loop has been developed and is being currently open and being used. And then the last thing would be just that the MU zoning district still meets the city's minimum use percentages for office, commercial, and residential with this proposed change. The applicant did provide a citizen participation report indicating that they received some questions at the CZIM meeting, and they detail what those questions were. They had questions about what happens to the office building, will sidewalks remain, was the product a for sale or for rent product, questions about the square footage of the units as well as price points, amenities, timing of the development, and stormwater. And then on the CZIM public sign-in sheets, we did not have any comments left on those sign-in sheets from the CZIM meeting on January 14th. And with that, staff is recommending approval of the applicant's request subject to 17 conditions, and I'll go through those. Condition 1 changes conditions 3A and 3C in the 2019 approval on this property. 3A deals with the office, so that reduces the maximum office from 630,080 square feet to 430,080 square feet. And then in condition 3C, that would amend that condition as it relates to the number of townhomes, so going from 60 to 87, and then adding the 25 single-family detached homes. You can see in that condition, we do have the no more than 10% of the homes in townhomes shall be permitted to be rented as recorded in the development covenants. Condition 2 is a site plan specific condition tying it to the applicant's site plan. I'm just gonna grab that and put that back up. Condition 3 is the architecture and material condition and ties it to these renderings. We did add to that condition that the townhomes and homes shall have four-sided architecture, materials, and details as approved by staff. Townhome buildings shall have chimneys on each end of the building, and a minimum 50% of the detached homes shall have chimneys. Condition 4 relates to the side elevations of certain homes and townhomes. So there are certain lots that are called out that match with the applicant's site plan. Those units have sides that directly abut a street, and we have a condition there that those side elevations be heavily landscaped as approved by staff. 5, subdivision shall not be gated. 6 are the eco-district measures. So eco-district measures are already addressed throughout the mixed-use development. We just want to make sure that we get some eco-district measures implemented within this 6.5-acre property. Those are presented at LDP and building permit. Condition 7 deals with the minimum 1.3 acres of open space and ties it to the applicant's plan. There's also a requirement there for a unique eco-district sculpture. So North Point Eco District, we have examples in that North Point creative placemaking plan that the applicant can look at to do a unique eco district sculpture. And there is already a sculpture requirement, a minimum, I believe, of 5 or 6 sculptures within this mixed use, and that would come out of that requirement. Condition 8 requires green stormwater design techniques shall be utilized to address runoff reduction. 9, privacy fences and unfinished wood decks shall not be visible from the right-of-way. 10, townhomes and homes shall have connectivity to the public sidewalk system. Condition 11, developer shall complete the streetscape along the western portion of Lake Street adjacent to the 6.46 acre site, which shall include planter, sidewalk, on-street parking as approved by staff. So that's this section of Lake Street. 12, new internal streets where sidewalk is depicted adjacent to the street shall be developed with a minimum 6-foot planter planted with street trees and a minimum 5-foot sidewalk as approved by staff. Decorative pedestrian lighting shall be required throughout the development. Internal streets and alleys shall be private and maintained by the HOA. Development and street names shall be representative of the North Point Eco District. 13, landscape strips shall be exclusive of utilities and easements, except that if Fulton County requires an unencumbered easement, shrubs shall replace tree requirements on one side of the street. This is just something that's come up a couple years ago with Fulton County wanting unencumbered easements for their water lines. And so we have had similar conditions on other requests as well. Condition 14, developer shall plant bare areas of the 20-foot landscape strip along Lakeview Parkway with trees and shrubs as approved by staff. So that's this landscape strip along Lakeview Parkway here. I think there's a bare area kind of towards closest to the roundabout. Of course, we need to be aware of site visibility issues, so we don't want trees too close to the intersection there that it would obstruct visibility. But filling in some areas, there may be a little bare area on this end as well. Condition 15, pedestrian amenities, including sidewalks, lighting, and benches, shall be included within the development. 16, cul-de-sac turnaround near the mail kiosk shall meet the turning requirements of a fire apparatus as approved by the fire marshal. 17, developers shall be responsible for the maintenance of the sidewalk along Lakeview Parkway. And that concludes the presentation. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you, Michael, for the presentation. I'll start with, on page 4, where we have the data on schools. Northwestern Middle School and Milton High School have enrollments that exceed capacity. I've asked this question for several years now. Is there a communication between the city or cities and Fulton County schools regarding how the trends look like and whether they need to do expansion of existing schools?
Yeah, so we do reach out to Fulton County schools with every public hearing application, and they're aware of the proposals that we're getting back, and they're providing feedback to us. So they do understand that there are developments that are being approved, and so they have that information on the number of residential units so that they can do their planning for capacity at the area schools.
Okay, next question. On page 3, there is a statement about stormwater management, master stormwater system. I haven't heard the term master. Does the word master means to cover the entire development? Or what type of stormwater management system is being proposed or would be suitable for this area?
So there is a master system that applies to the entire 62-acre mixed-use.
So master
development.
means it's covering everything.
Yes, it's providing stormwater for the entire 62-acre property. The applicant's engineer is here.
Oh,
If you don't mind,
Okay.
I'd rather him respond to that question. He's probably more informed than I am.
All right, I will do that. Thank you.
Hey, Michael, what's the deal, just on the small thing here, why is the subdivision shall not be gated? Why is that an issue or not?
So in the downtown and in North Point, we have, it's in our overlay codes that you can't gate. Otherwise, you have to ask for a variance. Outside of those two areas, outside of North Point and outside of downtown, you do have to include with your request to rezone, council basically has to approve the ability to gate a street. It's not a variance, it just has to come forward to council to approve it. So we do not, this is a mixed-use development, and so we do want all the uses should be working together and it should be an open community. So we just wanted to reinforce that in the condition that it shouldn't be gated.
Michael, condition 17, developers shall be responsible for the maintenance of the sidewalk along Lakeview Parkway. Once the developer is done and closes out, did we want to add, does it revert to the HOA? And should we clarify that in the condition?
I don't know that, I don't know how this development is set up. We might want to ask the applicant about that. I don't know that the HOA would be necessarily responsible for the maintenance of the sidewalk or how they would deal that. The reason why we put that in there is because what was done with the sidewalk along Lakeview Parkway, there's an existing smaller sidewalk, concrete sidewalk, and what we did is we had the applicant add in pavers kind of in the planter area between the existing sidewalk and the curb of the road along Lakeview Parkway. And it's become a little bit of a maintenance issue. And it doesn't meet what our standard sidewalk section would be. So that's why we added that condition in there. It's my understanding that the applicant was okay with that condition. But I believe that there's I don't know all the specifics of how each property is governed within this, but I believe that there may be a master association that may take that responsibility, but we may want to ask the applicant.
Okay, thanks,
for
I'll take it up with them.
Michael, can I ask you to put up the site plan from the 2019? And if you wouldn't mind, just to, I think, get everybody grounded in what currently exists on the site plan and what's still to come. Can you, separate from the 6 acres that we're looking at rezoning from office to residential, can you identify the other office buildings that have been added to the site?
Yeah, so the Colonial Pipeline office and parking deck are existing on the property today. And then this office building is existing today. This office building is served by a large surface parking lot, is what you see here. This office building and parking deck has not been constructed. This would represent the remaining office entitlement if
Okay.
the applicant's request was approved.
And then the commercial retail restaurant, where is that?
Yeah, so the retail village was concentrated at the corner here at Haynes Bridge and Lakeview Parkway. You then have a town green, and then townhomes that are being constructed by Toll Brothers. There's additional townhomes across. This is the 6.5 acre property that the applicant has before you this evening. So there's additional townhomes adjacent just across Lake Street. That also Toll Brothers are developing. And then this is the multifamily building, and then the ground floor retail restaurant is on the first floor of that building.
Correct.
And it has an internal parking deck.
So in 19, when it came forward for the conditional use of the apartments and the residential, one of the focuses for for the mixed-use site was the activation of the 10-acre lake that is, right now, the loop is going around. And there was a lot of discussion about how the benefit was that we were taking that private lake and making it public and making it available for the public to enjoy. And the Alpha Loop around it looks absolutely fabulous, and the additions that they've made to the public space there, I think, is fabulous as well. But during that particular hearing, parking was discussed about where the public would park to access that fabulous 10-acre lake. And as we know right now, there isn't a lot of connecting points from a walking perspective off of Lakeview or Morrison or Haynes Bridge. So it was, the understanding was that the parking deck that was designated for the site that we're now looking at, along with that surface parking and surface parking for Colonial, would be available after hours and on weekends for folks that were coming to enjoy the loop and the lake. If we take out, obviously, the deck and the surface parking for this 6-acre site, what are we left with in regards to public access and public parking for the
Yeah,
loop
so
and the lake?
there is on-street public parking existing along Lake Street, so that could be utilized. There will be some additional on-street parking with condition number 11. That would probably get you about another 15 parking spaces along this section of Lake Street. I don't know about the applicant's ability. I believe that this office site here is owned separately by Third and Urban. So I don't know if they have or can make any commitments to any public parking on off hours at that location, but I'll let the applicant speak to that. But that would be the main available public parking is going to be the on-street parking along Lake Street.
And does the townhome, the existing townhome community, the Toll Brothers development, does that have guest parking anywhere, designated guest?
It's got some guest parking, but it's pretty small. I think I looked at that. I want to say that it was maybe 6 or 7 parking spaces for this grouping of townhomes here. And I don't believe this one has any extra dedicated guest spaces. They of course have the 2 parking spaces in the garage as well as the 18-foot driveways.
And you talked about how one of the conditions, they will be on the western side of Lake Street, they will be adding on-street parking.
Yeah.
Is that just on one side of Lake Street there? Because it's double-sided on the other.
It's just on the side that
On
is
one side?
adjacent to
Okay.
the 6.5-acre property.
So do you have any idea what the number of parking spaces that would?
So I just looked,
Roughly?
I counted the number that were on this section of Lake Street, and it was about, I want to say it was about 15. And this looks slightly longer than this segment, so I felt like at least 15
Minimum.
could fit
Yeah.
in there.
Okay,
It's approximate number.
thank you.
Michael, following that question, I wanted to confirm that the parking spaces that we're talking about, the street parking, are not included in the calculation for guest parking that's described on page 3. For each townhome and home will accommodate 2 side-by-side parking spaces in a garage, as well as 2 spaces on a code-compliant driveway for a total of 208 parking spaces. In addition, 24 guest parking spaces are depicted within the development. Is that street parking included in the 24?
It is not.
Okay.
It is not. The 24 are completely within this development.
Okay, thank you.
Has the section of the Alpha Loop along Georgia 400 been constructed yet?
This section here? No, I don't believe so, no. Yeah.
And who will construct it?
That will be a city project, correct? Yeah. So it will most likely a city project put it out to bid.
Be nice if the applicant did it. Okay. Any other questions for Michael? Yes, please.
Was there any consideration given for retail walkable to office? I mean, you have a significant office population. Do you feel that the walkability from Colonial and Georgia 400 Center to the retail at Haynes Bridge, is that close in proximity for lunch and
Yeah,
gather a
we
bunch of
talked,
population.
when this thing, this particular mixed-use development came in, it's been in for several changes to this master plan. I think maybe it started as Peridot and then MetLife. It's had a lot of different lives, if you will, before TPA group actually executed it. And we did look at, maybe putting some retail kind of closer to the lake. This is the site layout that we ended up with. This is highly walkable. They put in large sidewalks along Lake Street. So yes, the office buildings are kind of concentrated on this west side of the development with the retail at this corner. But we felt like the walkability that has been created within the development, that it would be sufficient for those office users.
All right, if there are no further questions, we'll have the applicant come forward and make a presentation.
There's a slight delay, I think, in letting it.
All right, we have it.
Awesome. Can you guys see? Kenneth Wood, 350 Research Court, Peachtree Corners, Georgia. Thank you guys so much for letting us present tonight. Really excited about the development and kind of how it's evolved. I have Tyler Wakefield with TPA, so he can answer any questions about the evolution, kind of where it's come from, as well as we also have Todd Thrasher with Trayton, who would be the developer as well as the builder on the project. So just wanted to kind of orient. I know everyone knows where it is when you're looking at Lake Park, but when you drive in, the one thing we first started on this, and they were asking me to come up with some different designs about how the residential could lay into where the office is. That street when you come in, it just feels like that feels like a really nice mixed-use street. The way the retail is on the right, picturing where the retail would be there. You have the offices set in the back with the additional office to come, and it's still 430,000 square feet, which is a huge amount, even without the reduction. I know in my office park, we're actually a little bit further, and we definitely try to walk as much as we can, and we're even a little bit further. So I definitely love the question. And it's when you're kind of looking at the plan, I'll kind of walk you guys through the sidewalk systems. Because what was really great about this one is the sidewalk systems, even though they're kind of spurs of the Alpha Loop, they're really wide and they all connect throughout this entire development when you're looking at it. But everything is kind of centered around here, so convenience is so great. Whether you work back toward the city, you work in Alpharetta, you even work north, you can hop on the interstate and get there very quickly. You have a very small commute. And like I said, with what we're looking at doing, we're reducing the traffic by a lot, which was one of the most major concerns during the CZIM and talking to a lot of the neighbors is they were trying to imagine having another 200,000 of office that accesses internally to this smaller road. And I think that's one of the big things. The additional office that's left, and one of the reasons it was decided about this one, that actually accesses up on the main Morrison. And so when you're looking at it and just thinking about Lakeview Parkway, this is kind of that interior road. And so that bigger office would have accessed on the smaller interior road, creating a lot of concerns. When we went out there, one of the things that really popped up about this was almost what you started talking about. The access to the Alpha Loop is amazing. What was done with the lake and the trails around it, and almost kind of like the chicane coming down to it and the way the landscaping is. It just felt really great, and was really one of the emphasis in trying to look at this site for residential. We wanted to look at the history of it, and looking here, we noticed that the office was kind of always designed over toward the townhomes, kind of pushing it closer. That was a 4-story office building, really large, almost 350 feet long, with a large parking deck kind of back over to the side. And as you can see, all that access was on that internal road, which really felt like a mixed-use road and more of a residential mixed-use road with the towns, the retail. You have the Pilates there that's super ongoing right now and very popular. You also have that retail village that could access in kind of both ways out quickly. But really, as you get back further in here, we think this is much more suitable to be the residential. And so then that got us thinking on the design and how we were starting to look forward. And this was kind of a great aerial to show you guys while we felt like that mixed-use road was more residential. You can see Morrison Lake in the background, how the townhomes orient to the site. And I really want to kind of walk through how we landed on this and how we actually love the way we're able to set back even a little bit further, even than some of the residential that's out there now. And this is just kind of a comparison, as Michael mentioned to you guys. We're well within the confines of that mixed use, and we're only dropping to about 40. And so the office is still the dominant use within this mixed use because we're only adding 52 homes. The thing that's really unique about this, as TPA got with Trayton, want to build a really high quality residential to add that little bit of extra residential for the walkability and for that retail to come, is the way we can break it out. And so we did that through using a lot of detached. And so there's not a ton, there's a couple of different projects, Upper Hembry, Avalon, kind of going down some of the streets close to here, but there's not a ton of that, kind of really urban, kind of detached. So we wanted to have the blend, not have all townhomes, and that's why you see almost a 50-50 blend between the detached, and we make sure that Lake basically was lined with that detached. One thing to notice is just how far back from the street it is, and I'll kind of show you guys some of the imagery about what we were trying to get across with that. If you're looking at kind of this, I don't know if I can point. Oh, I can. Okay. If you guys can see this, kind of this street here on Lake, this already has a 10-foot sidewalk that's constructed, and so we wanted to orient but also give private room behind it. And that sidewalk actually sits pretty far back behind some parallel parking spaces, and we're even further back behind it. Same thing with the townhomes. You can kind of see on the other side of the street, the townhomes are a little bit closer. This is going to have a little bit more green space set back a little bit further. These will actually be like a 2-3 split, so it'll be like kind of two stories from the road, kind of coming back in here. We also got really great comments from the neighbors. They brought up, they did want to see the traffic the office would generate or how large it was. We talked a lot about price points, so we can talk about that. They did bring up the guest parking. They were talking about how popular the Pilates and some of the places are out there. And so definitely parking over here. And then we also went back in our plan, and we're almost parking. They don't have a lot of guests here. It's rear loaded, so you're seeing the front of the homes, including this green space, 60 feet wide, and it feels really good. We're looking at doing high-end amenities here. We're trying to decide right now whether that's going to be kind of like a customized smaller pool or some type of a pavilion with a fire pit, but a really nice amenity for the residents that would be through here, as well as the green space that we have as you're kind of looking through. So I just want to kind of walk down through a couple of the images. We went out there. These are some of the pictures that really kind of set the place. This is what it looks like today when you're walking out there, and it feels very, whether you're at the office and you're going to walk for lunch at Colonial or one of the other ones, or you're at one of the residences, it just feels like a great mixed use in the way it's been set up and implemented. These are some of the other pictures that kind of drove the idea to create the single family detached as well as the others. So these are some of the pictures, and the homes don't represent exactly the sketches we have from the architect or those, but these I want to just kind of illustrate how much green space we're trying to have on those sides and in that front. That's what it really represents is, we're not right up on the road. We want to have a little bit more green space to that wider sidewalk. So we're really trying to have that as you set in. This is kind of a look, trying to look down from that road back in toward that green space. That way you can see the townhomes kind of set back, and that's internal where it would sit down. Same thing view here, whether that's that pavilion or the pool area, you're kind of looking around, and that way we have the really nice landscaping up on the front that's here. As Michael indicated, here are the townhome elevations that we have, as well as the detached elevations that we have. A couple other points I just wanted to bring up. We looked at the master hydrology study. The CN, the curve number that's slated for that office, was all the way up to a 92. That's about as close to fully paved as you can get for a site. We're right around a 78 about what we're proposing, maybe even 75. So it's already designed at a 92, so we're well under that, and we will be doing green infrastructure measures, and so stormwater will be something that we take very seriously on the site as well, that we're looking at too. And like I mentioned, just trying to beef up that parking and getting that ratio, because we do have a good bit of detached, 25 to 27 on the site and the way we were looking at it. So wanted to make sure I mentioned that as well. The sidewalk maintenance, I heard that kind of come up. That would be the HOA because the sidewalk would be just inside, but it is in cooperation with the master HOA, and so they work together. That's how they currently do it today. So I wanted to make sure I do that. And with that, I can answer any questions or leave any amount of time for rebuttal.
I'll start with the stormwater facility. What type are you proposing?
So So stormwater for this site was designed in the lake for detention only. And so there's a large pipe that actually comes right here and is stubbed to this development to tie into. So the overbank and the stormwater detention is designed in the lake, and that's that 92. It was designed at a much higher impervious, and we're at a much lower, so we're going to reduce that. But on our site, through these green space areas, we're looking at draining off of here into a bio area. We also have another little bio area here. We were looking at having the island invert. We're seeing a lot of that you can kind of invert the island and have the water quality infiltration. And then up along the front here, we have different places where we have bioswales. So as far as the Eco Park, beside the sculpture, we also have the green infrastructure that we're tapping into as well.
When is the expected construction period?
So it will just kind of starting, if we started looking at, let's just if we were approved in the March hearing, it would probably take, let's just say we submitted plans in the beginning of the summer. We were approved in the fall, starting construction. So let's just say late fall construction start would be late 26. You probably wouldn't start seeing homes, going vertical till probably summer of 27. And then I imagine it's like a year and a half build out, probably about an 18-month build out, something around there. So probably summer of 27 vertical, and then seeing, homes over about a, 14 to 18-month period being constructed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just as a matter of curiosity, who currently maintains and dredges the lake, and who will eventually be responsible?
I believe it is TPA, the master declarant of that.
Okay, once the
And
declarant...
they will remain. So yeah, the master declarant remains on that. And then like for instance, the multifamily has their own HOA. This would have their own HOA. Toll Brothers has their own HOA. So each one has a sub HOA that I imagine they pay into the master. They all pay into the master, and then the master is responsible for the common grounds.
Okay, so once the declarant period is over, it will revert to the master HOA.
That's right.
Understood, thank you.
That's right.
Okay, I guess I'll go. Just to follow up on the conversation I was having with Mr. Woodman in regards to parking for Alpha Loop visitors. Can you address that, or?
We can. So what we've been talking about is you have some of the existing here, but once we start adding in all the way around this corner, it might even be more. I mean, 15, 18 type spaces that were there. And so what we were talking about earlier, I was actually at a meeting earlier, and we started talking about this subject, is trying to designate, because that's going to be a lot of extra spaces. Internally, we've got a lot of guest spaces for our development as well. And so we were talking about doing some type of signage where you're designating Alpha Loop type parking. I know that's been done in different places within the downtown district. So that was kind of where we started the conversation, but we're open to a lot of things.
So just to back up to the 2019 plan, again, the office parking and the deck and the surface parking at Colonial was also identified as a potential after-hour site. It was over 600 spaces would have been available. So I'm happy to hear 15 could be something that you'd be interested in, but I do think I'd be interested in learning more about, designating a fair number of those 15, but also the likelihood of having discussions with the office that currently has surface parking, because they actually have access to the loop from that surface parking location. Is that something that is conceivable, or?
Good evening, everyone. Tyler Wakefield of TPA Group. That property is owned solely by Colonial Pipeline.
I can't hear you.
That property is owned solely by Colonial Pipeline at this time.
So the existing office building that was there before 2019 is owned by Colonial Pipeline as well as the Colonial Pipeline building?
No, ma'am. The
No.
building further to the north, I believe it is owned by a company called Third and
Third and
Urban.
Urban,
Yes.
right. So my question is it conceivable that TPA would be able to have discussions with them?
We'd be happy to have discussions with them, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then as far as tonight is concerned, would you be open to a condition that identifies that the additional 15 parking spaces along Lake Street, you'd be open to designating that for Alpha Loop visitors?
We are open to that, yes.
You are? Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Any further questions for the applicant? I hear no further questions, so I'm going to open this for public comments. And then after the words, you can have some time for rebuttal. Anybody in favor of the application, please come forward. Seeing none, anyone in opposition? No one in favor, no one in opposition. You have anything else you'd like to add before I turn this over to the board?
No, it just sounds to be, for the condition to be included about the parking, so that would be number 18.
You want, okay, add a new condition number 18.
That was my question.
Okay.
Is there a condition that it would tag along with, or would it be just be an additional condition?
I think the existing condition number 11 speaks to the on-street parking on Lake Street. So I think we can tag on a sentence there for that.
Gotcha,
Okay.
okay.
Can I ask the home builder to come forward? Because I do have a couple
Sure,
of questions.
absolutely.
Yep.
Todd Thrasher, Trading Homes.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
Thank you for being here.
Yes, ma'am.
Curious, have you done single-family homes in Alpharetta before?
We have. It's been a while, but we have. It's
We're-
been several years.
Okay.
I wasn't with the company when we did. But I have personally developed to sell single-family homes in Alpharetta.
And townhomes as well?
I'm sorry?
You've also done townhome communities in Alpharetta as well?
I would have to check with the team, because again, I believe we did Echo Park. I believe Trayton did Echo Park on West Side Parkway.
West Side Parkway?
Yes, ma'am. Encore.
Encore Walk, thank you. Can you share what kind of price points you're looking at for both the single-family and the townhomes?
Well, I believe the conversation with council has been more of an affordable price point. And so I believe that these will probably start somewhere in the 7s and go on up from there. We anticipate that the detached will be significantly higher than that.
So townhomes starting at 7 and then detached 8, 9?
Yes, ma'am. And north.
And
Yes,
up?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right, I will turn this over to the board for discussion and a motion, or a motion.
Make a motion, but what, did you want to add a number 17? Yeah, did you?
I think what we had discussed was that existing condition 11 would be the appropriate spot to add a sentence that identifies their willingness to designate 15 Alpha Loop visitor spots on Lake Street.
It references on-street parking.
Yep.
So we build out that sentence.
Right.
Of dedicating 15 on-street parking spots.
Potential wording might be something like, for condition 11, developer shall complete the streetscape along the western portion of Lake Street adjacent to the 6.46 acre site which shall include planters, sidewalk, on-street parking, including at least 15 spaces dedicated to Alpha Loop access as approved by staff. Is that appropriate?
Alpha Loop visitors.
Visitors, thank you.
Yes. And one more question, sorry, sir. Would you be open to also having signage reflected in those 15 spots?
We do. I think we were talking about there's some standard signage the city has that we can implement.
Great. Okay, awesome.
And can I have one more question while you're, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Are you tying in aesthetics with the Toll Brothers signage package, et cetera, for the community? Is that?
I believe there's some standards.
Okay.
That TPA has.
We do have a signage standard, and we'd like the opportunity to advertise the right language, but with our font and colors, if that would be acceptable.
Okay, thanks.
Only one comment I would make on the space count is if we could just allow the time to make sure we can fit the number of space. We'll
Yeah,
fit as
if
many
you
as,
have working
we'll
with
fit as many
staff.
as we can. It's just, I want to, 15,
That's right.
I think is workable. I just wanted to mention that. We were required to put brakes in along Lake Street previously. And so if we have brakes, that could dwindle the number some, but we're open to densifying that as much as we can.
And I think as long as we have as approved by staff, we're
Okay.
covered
Thank you.
with that.
Thank you.
Anyone wants to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve MP-26-02 Trayton Homes / Lakeview Park MP, subject to the following conditions as noted by staff. And number 11, developers shall complete the streetscape along the western portion of Lake Street adjacent to the 6.46 acre site, which shall include planter, sidewalk, on-street parking as approved by staff, including 15 spaces with Alpha Loop access and appropriate signage.
I think that's clear. Motion has been made and properly seconded. Any further discussions? Hearing none, or in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries. It goes before council on the 23rd.
Thank you guys.
Thank you very much. Anything else that the board needs to consider? Hearing none. The meeting is adjourned. See you in March. Yes, I think it was important to go through the first one for the reasons so they can start preparing.
Yeah, and I felt very bad that the pastor, I think, felt he was being unfairly treated. That's why I tried to make the point, there could be any business going into that building.
That was a very good point you made. And if anything, the church would probably be the least to worry about. The meeting on Sunday.
But you need to say that. I mean, it could be an Amway distributor with people coming and going randomly.